And welcome to Hannity, and this is a Fox News alert. In a major blow to the Obama administration, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled that President Obama not only abused his executive power, but also violated the Constitution. Now, in a unanimous decision, the highest court in the land sided with Senate Republicans. They overturned the president's 2012 recess appointments to the National Labor Relations Board. Now, the ruling comes on the heels of House Speaker John Boehner's announcement that he is suing the President of the United States for a similar reason, what he considers his brazen abuse of power. Fox's own Shannon Bream has reporting from the Supreme Court all day. She joins us tonight from Washington. Shannon.
Sean, it was a unanimous opinion. All the justices agree that when the president decided to make 3 appointments to the National Labor Relations Board, the Senate was in session. And by making those appointments, the president stepped over his constitutional boundaries. Writing for the majority, Justice Stephen Breyer said this, quote, "We hold that for purposes of the recess appointments clause, the Senate is in session when it says it is, provided that under its own rules, it retains the capacity to transact Senate business. The Senate met that standard here."
There's a lot of danger in the chief executive having too much power. We need a Congress that can have the ability to push back on the president. We need to remind the president routinely that he's not a king.
But Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid says the court got it wrong. Quote, "Since President Obama took office, Senate Republicans have done everything possible to deny qualified nominees from receiving a fair up or down vote. President Obama did the right thing when he made these appointments on behalf of American workers." Next up for the High Court, 10 a.m. Eastern on Monday, we will get the Hobby Lobby decision. The craft store chain is owned by a devoutly Christian family who says its religious freedom will be violated if it's forced to comply with the HHS contraceptive mandate, which would force them to provide employees cost-free access to 20 forms of contraception, including 4 the Hobby Lobby owners believe can cause an abortion. We'll see Monday what the justices think about that religious freedom claim. Sean?
All right, Shannon, we'll be watching Monday. Thank you. Meanwhile, another bombshell hit Capitol Hill yesterday when investigators discovered shocking email evidence showing that disgraced IRS official Lois Lerner directly targeted veteran Republican Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa back in 2012. An email suggested that Lerner sought to have Grassley audited after receiving an invitation that was meant to go to the senator. And for the very latest on this developing story, we turn to Carl Cameron. He is also standing by tonight in Washington with all the details. Carl, it never ends.
New outrage, new calls for a special prosecutor, and all of this comes because a nonprofit group wanted to invite both Lois Lerner and Senator Chuck Grassley to an event. And the invitation for Grassley mistakenly went to Lerner, and in it there was an offer from the nonprofit group to pay some of Mrs. Grassley's expenses. Lerner took a look at that, thought that there might be a problem with it, and sent an email to a colleague suggesting that it be further examined potentially for an audit. That email has now surfaced. Senator Grassley has known about it for a couple of months, and he has been very careful about all of his remarks, using prepared statements on business cards and on 3x5s in order to contain his language in anticipation of a whole new avenue of investigation in the IRS scandal. So angry, so outraged are Republicans that this afternoon on the U.S. Senate floor, Ted Cruz went to the floor of the Senate and put in the historic record forever his charge that there should be immediately on the U.S. Senate a resolution to appoint a special prosecutor and that Democrats should support it. And he said that if Eric Holder, the U.S. Attorney General and the Obama administration's appointee there, does not appoint a special prosecutor, he should be impeached. Very tough stuff. Look for the House Ways and Means Committee Chairman Dave Camp to begin to push his own additional investigation into this. He has jurisdiction over it. All across the Hill, the investigators are going back into this, thinking they have another example of Lois Lerner's abuse of power. And Sean, one thing on House Speaker John Boehner's lawsuit against the president. He's going forward with it now. That's clear, strengthened in part by the decision from the Supreme Court that Shannon was just talking about. And we have now a system for how that will be done. The resolution's language has not yet been written, but it'll go to what's called the Bipartisan Legislative Advisory Group. That is basically 2 of the top Democrats in the House and 2 of the top Republicans in the House, plus the Speaker, who in John Boehner's case is a Republican, which means there would be a 3-2 majority to approve it, send it to the House Rules Committee, and ultimately on the floor for a vote. Republicans certainly have the majority to pass it. They are hoping that this is so egregious that they'll actually pick up a few conservative Democrats to go along with suing the president. Sean.
All right, Carl Cameron in Washington tonight. Carl, thank you. And joining me now at the Hannity Big Board with more details surrounding the IRS scandal, Fox and Friends First, co-host Ainsley Earhardt. All right, so what's amazing about this part of it, the Grassley part of this, which, by the way, which was an email retrieved on a BlackBerry,
right,
is that this was apparently an invitation meant for Senator Grassley and potentially bringing his wife, an event he never even went to, and immediately she wants to turn it over for a potential investigation before it even happened. You
know what's interesting? We have the Grassley being targeted. We have conservative groups being targeted. We have missing emails. And don't you remember the administration, their narrative this entire time has been, there's no scandal here. Let's move on. There's nothing to see. Let's go on. Listen to this.
But no mass corruption.
Not even mass corruption, not even a smidgen of corruption.
I have seen no evidence of wrongdoing.
They're becoming increasingly desperate to try to substantiate the conspiracy theories that they've been propagating for some time now.
Not a smidgen, Ainsley.
Yeah, it seems like every day, Sean, another shoe drops, doesn't it? 75% of Americans in a recent Fox News poll say that they believe that these emails were destroyed intentionally by the administration. That's staggering. That's 3/4 of the Americans that were polled.
And it's also it's all those 64% of Democrats in that poll. So,
exactly. Exactly. No partisan lines here. But what caused this distrust? This is the question you were asking Cleta Mitchell. She is the lady, the attorney that's representing these conservative groups that are being targeted by the IRS. And here's what she had to say last night on your show.
We've had 4 commissioners of the IRS or acting commissioners in a row who've trotted up to Congress and lied. That's what they've done. They've made false statements. Doug Shulman, when he was commissioner, told the Oversight Committee that there was no targeting of conservative groups. That was a lie. Stephen Miller, who was the acting commissioner, testified last May that there was nothing that the IRS or he had done wrong. That was a lie. We had Danny Werfel, who was dispatched by the Obama White House to go over there last May. And he testified in June of last year there was no intentional wrongdoing, even though he didn't interview any employees. That was a lie. And now we have Koskinen.
There was a lot of lying, and then we can go back to some of the other scandals, Fast and Furious, and, of course, Benghazi seems to be a pattern of behavior, and it gets worse.
Oh, you're exactly right. And we learned today that the commissioner of the IRS, John Koskinen, you've heard his name a lot in the news, he's been giving to the Democrats all of these years, upwards of $85,000 of his own money.
Mere coincidence.
This is the commissioner of the IRS. Since 1980, he has given to every single Democratic presidential candidate, including Barack Obama in 2012, and that's when all of the scandal was going on. So first we have the IRS losing the emails, and now we find out the EPA has also lost emails.
Oh, yeah, I heard about that, too.
Yeah.
Right, but also, we went over the timeline last night, Ainsley, and the timeline of this is very suspicious because you have Lois Lerner, and 10 days after the scandal investigation begins, hard drive crashes, the other people's hard drives crash, they get rid of the company, the backup servers. Remember, these emails were subpoenaed in August of 2013. They knew they were missing in February of 2014. The IRS commissioner said you'll get all the emails in March of 2014. And they didn't tell Congress until June this month.
And, you know, she originally in 2011 asked her IT department, she said, I've lost some personal data. And now they're saying they have lost emails. So what is it? Is it personal data? Is it lost emails? It just seems very suspicious at this point.
Well, I think, you know, we've been talking to a lot of IT people. They think they might be retrievable. Great reporting. And you're going to be back later in the program.
I'll be back later in the program.
To talk about Homes for Heroes.
Best country in the world. Can't we get these emails, really?
It's 2014. Good point. Ainsley, thank you. And here with reaction to all the latest news surrounding the IRS scandal, as well as the Boehner lawsuit against President Obama. From the National Journal, Ron Fournier is with us, and constitutional professor, George Washington University, is Jonathan Turley. Thank you both for being here. Ron, I was particularly interested in your comments. We've had Jonathan on a number of times talking about a constitutional tipping point. You said you were naive to give Obama the benefit of the doubt last year on the IRS. Why?
Thanks for having me on. Well, because exactly a year ago, I called for a special prosecutor because at the time, this is early on, only 6 weeks into the scandal, it was clear to me that we had probable cause for an investigation. It was also clear to me that the Republican House was incapable, especially Dara Issa, of running a thorough, really thorough, deep, well-respected, credible investigation without grandstanding. It was also clear to me that the White House, if they really wanted to have transparency, if they really wanted to have the credibility of the American public, the best thing for them was to get all the evidence out. And I wrote in that column that I would like to believe that if there was anything nefarious here, it was not done with direction of the White House, but we needed to get the facts out. What's happened since then? What's happened since then in the last year is shortly after that column, the White House started talking about a phony scandal, which of course is ridiculous because we haven't gotten to the bottom of this yet. And then, as you know, just a few days ago, we found out that we had these missing emails. So, yeah, I feel kind of naive for even thinking about giving them the benefit of the doubt, which doesn't mean I stopped doing my job. I called for a special prosecutor right away. But now we're at the point where, we still don't know whether or not there was an abuse of power in the IRS, and we have both parties posturing and grandstanding, and we still don't have a thorough investigation, which is why I still think we need a special prosecutor.
I agree with you totally. I think you need an objective eyes on this. But now, with each developing part of the story, are you more suspicious that something nefarious was going on?
How could you not be? Like I wrote the night that the emails were, came up missing, which, by the way, happened on a Friday night when you tried to bury news. You can't blame anybody now. You can't blame any American for being suspicious about this. And the White House, every time they blow this off and kind of act smug about it, they're just undermining their own credibility. They have to realize that they're undermining not only their credibility, but the public's trust in government, which is the core of the Democratic Party. This is bad politics, bad policy, bad governance.
Jonathan, you and I don't often agree politically, but you have been an incredible watchdog as it relates to the integrity of the Constitution and certainly separation of powers and co-equal branches of government. And we've had you on talking about what you call we may be at a tipping point constitutionally in the country. As it relates to today's Supreme Court decision, and in this particular case, and the president, you said, effectively has rewritten laws. He's crossed a constitutional line. What is your reaction to the court decision today, and what impact will this have on the president moving forward?
Well, it was a fascinating decision. I testified at the hearing, the Judiciary Committee hearing, after the appointments were made. And I testified at that time that I believe they were flagrantly unconstitutional. There are close questions, as I said to the committee, in constitutional law, but this was not one of them. And I'm still astonished that the Obama administration litigated this case. Yeah. They abandoned a long principle of past presidents not to push these to final decisions. This decision today wiped out decades of efforts by prior presidents to try to increase their authority in this area. It's a major, major loss. But it's the right decision. And at the end of the day, it means that the president again violated the separation of powers. And this is becoming something of a serial violation for the president. What the president did here, I can't imagine any competent lawyer would look at it and say, yes, you do have that authority. It was clearly an effort to circumvent. And what's interesting, Sean, is that there's a little paragraph in this long 100-page opinion that has been overlooked. The paragraph from the court says that this clause is not there for branches to work around other branches. It essentially was a veiled reference to this concept of going it alone. The court said there's a clear purpose to this clause. It's not there to be used effectively as a weapon. And I think that's a shot across the bow in a lot of these different areas.
Yep. We're going to have to leave it there. I wish we had more time. Ron, thank you. And Jonathan, as always, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Sean.